Welcome back, I'm Captain Xavier, and today we have a fun little build made from essentially scraps. Somebody in the comments noted that as I had used a Cycloneshock cylinder to make the absolver for one of my commissions, a Drain Blaster commission, I therefore somewhere had a Cycloneshock with no cylinder, and what was I going to do with that? Well, I was, of course, going to make it modular because, as we all know, I like all things modular. So, it's really a ridiculously simple modification that I've made to it. I did a spring upgrade. I haven't done a K26 upgrade, so I'm going to do that now. Previously, when I tried to put a K26 into one of these, it wouldn't take it because I had not increased the catch spring. But I know that now, and so I am going to increase the catch spring, which should resolve that issue. Okay, and on my previous one, I had to add quite a bit of spring in order to get it strong enough. The trick with adding spring, of course, is that you still need to be able to get enough compression for whatever you're working on to properly function. So we're going to take a very small spring, but fairly stout, and put it inside the original spring. And then we're going to try and see if we can't find a larger spring that will fit on the outside. This was something I had a little bit issue with before. Definitely stouter. Now I'm not even sure what I originally put in this. I added some spring of some kind, but not K26. It has a very nice long screw in the plunger head, so it's not likely to tear out. If I remember correctly, I also had to Dremel out the inside of the plunger head in order to get enough compression. Now comes the dremeling. You gotta be careful. If you Dremel too far, you'll bore right through the sides and then you'll have no structural integrity. We're going to go ahead and give this a try. I end up having to cut it down a little bit. Such is life. Alright, what I did there was Dremel down the spring guides. There's a frame that the back end of the spring kind of fits into, and since the K26 is a little bit wider than the original, it won't fit in. The upper and lower will stretch a little bit, so the shell can still close, but these two side ones obviously can't, not if you want the shell to be able to close. So, that should make the K26 seat a little bit better. Yes, indeed. Now, one nice thing about this design, since there's no longer any cylinder, I was able to take out the entire rotating mechanism, which makes the blaster much simpler. And then to make it modular, I simply glued a piece of 1/2-inch thread onto the end of the plunger. The air restrictor has, of course, been removed, and that fits on there nicely and is good and snug and will let me attach any of Eyer's attachments. Though, even with a K26 in this big plunger, it still can't fire things like rockets particularly well. That you pretty much have to have compressed air for. But it will do the sledge fire cylinder very, very nicely, as well as, you know, single elite, single mega, single rival will all fire nicely. I also have a little pop rocket attachment now that this will also fire. Those rockets are small enough that they can be fired by a Maverick, so this thing is going to shoot them just fine. So let's get it put back together and see if I have if the spring combination I have in here is functional. I may have to cut down the K26, or I may need to add more catch spring. These are things we tinker with. I'm also kind of hoping to look at the shell and see if I can't find a way to reinforce some of it. One of these should be for this project. Given the color, I'm thinking it's this bottom corner. Alright, well, that actually does catch, so that's lovely. I'm going to finish buttoning it up and see what absolvers I have available to test. Both of my sledge fire shell absolvers ended up getting bought on Etsy, and I haven't made any new ones yet, so I don't have that, but I do have, of course, all the various singled barrels as well as the pop rocket. I've got the Boomco and the mega cylinders, so I'm fair certain I can put together a worthy test. For shell modifications, of course, I cut off the front of it, as you can see, in order to allow me to attach whatever absolvers I wanted. I kept this down here just as a convenient place to hold, and because it was a convenient cutoff point, nice small gap, though the screw mount here is fake. I don't know what genius at Hasbro got the brilliant idea of going through all their blasters and figuring out exactly which screw mounts they could do without and thus save a couple of screws, which over the course of millions of blasters is actually probably a decent savings, but it does mean that occasionally you'll come across what looks like a screw in a screw mount that is in fact fake. Fascinating. Do need to come up with some kind of a cover here and probably some kind of a cover there just for cosmetics. Didn't want to put on the original, I think there's actually tack rail up here, and I didn't want to cut off and have a little section of useless tack rail when I could use that tack rail somewhere else. So there's a little bit of cosmetic work, but I'm going to go take it out and see just how well it fires with the K26, because I'm curious. Alright, well, we have a whole variety of barrel attachments to try out on my rather fascinating Modular Cycloneshock with a K26 in it. So let's start out with a singled Elite. And another. Now a Mega Dart off of the Exploder's barrel attachment. Now a Boomco Dart out of the same attachment. Good lord. Well, what's going on with that? Now for fun and absurdity, a Pop Rocket. Now a rival round. Didn't even fire. Huh. That one went fairly good. Now I do not have my Sledgefire shell absolvers because both of them sold and I haven't made a new one. But I do have the Hammer Shot, which fires 5, which I imagine is not going to work well at all. And that worked better than I expected. All right then, let's go take a look. So I am not entirely sure what went wrong with the Boomco, but they are coming in here at 30 feet, but so did the 5-round absolver all at once. We're coming in, the least was at 26 and the most was actually farther than that, so that's kind of surprising. Not sure why the Boomco darts are shooting so poorly, probably not getting a good seal maybe. We'll have to look into that. The first rival round came in here at 38, not terribly impressive, but once again, I think there's some tinkering that needs to happen. Probably need to work on the seal in the plunger tube. The farthest from the 5-shot absolver came in at 45, which is actually really impressive if you ask me, for a Springer pistol firing 5 elites at once. The Pop Rocket came in at 54. That's fascinating. The Mega Darts were coming in at 60. Not all that impressive, but, you know, not bad. Also, one of the rival rounds also came in here at 60. The impressive ones, of course. Might not even be able to find them. The singled Elite that was slightly angled, though not particularly high, came in at over 100, probably around 115 would be my guess. So there you have it. The Modular Cycloneshock seems to work pretty good on some attachments, not so good on others, but what can you expect? Alright. Well, there you have it, the field tests for the Modular K26 Cycloneshock were more or less what you'd expect, with a few surprises. I was very surprised with how well the 5-round absolver worked on it. Also surprised at how poorly the Boomco round seemed to be working. I'll need to look into that. Like I said, the seal might not be so great in a couple of places, so I will probably look into that. I didn't actually put Teflon tape under the O-ring, so there's probably a little bit being lost there. The rival rounds worked as well as I expected. The Mega Dart rounds didn't work quite as well as expected. I'm still trying to work on a better Mega Dart barrel, one that's I think people keep telling me it's 25 millimeter conduit, which unfortunately I live in the States and millimeters are, strange and scary to us. So there you have it. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, go ahead and put them in the comments below, and thank you for watching.